Well, first of all, I think I need to apologize to you, my dear listeners. I think I went on too long uh, when I was telling you about the ethno and then about the baskets that were under the ethno show. It's an exciting subject to me, both. And the baskets, if I had one here to show, I'll get going again. So I got to be careful. It's a long story I've got to tell here, and I could make it a lot longer. Well, anyway, let's see, where are we? Uh, it's evening, and the group of yeomen, that's Violet's younger son, and Lance, of course, and Violet, they've watched Shakespeare in Love. And uh, the timing was perfect in a way because in comes Elaine. And she's all excited. She's almost bouncing with excitement. She had had such a good evening. She loved her work, uh, and she explained about the people that she was working for. Dr. Omar Al Hakim. She was right about the last name, and his wife is also a doctor. They're both surgeons, and his wife is Indira Patel. Well, the man is Muslim, from Pakistan, actually. Well, his ancestry is. They're both just as American as the three of them. And his wife, she's from India, and she's Hindu, and yet they're married. They met in the Army, in the U.S. Army. As I say, they're as American as you could be. That's where they met, and then they married, and they're retired. And both proud of their heritage in a way, well, in every way. Doctor, or she's got to learn to stop. They don't like to be called doctor. Indira, she was wearing a sari, those Indian dresses, uh, well, anyway, and Lance was right about what they wanted with the Moot Point. They'd bought a house and a barn, and about, I don't know, maybe a field. I don't know, maybe 10 acres. Um, and they were turning, or they're in the process of turning the barn. It's one of those big old dairy barns, bank barn, like they have lots of here in Pennsylvania. But it's like that with a ramp, and they're turning the whole barn into a beer hall. They agreed that there isn't really a word for it that they know of in English, so they call it a beer hall, but that's really not quite right. Maybe a Keller, well, that's German. And so her job, that is Elaine's job, is as a beer maid, or a Kellerin, I think you'd say in German. Um, they didn't serve meals. They had snacks and stuff like that. They didn't serve any hard alcohol. You could get coffee or tea if you want. It was a beer hall. Uh, well, anyway, and what they wanted, and it was a work in progress. I mean, there's tapes up where you shouldn't go because there's all kinds of construction going on. They're just opening it. Uh, the parking lot isn't even paved, uh, and uh, so anyway, they're working around as they're going, and they have a small clientele. There weren't that many people. Now they explained about wanting to have all kinds of different people come, like a moot, really, a place where different people would meet, and they encouraged Elaine to actually sit down and talk with the clientele, and she did. She'd met some really fun people and had such a good time, and got the beer and all that. And another thing, uh, she wasn't the only one working there. There was a pair. She didn't want to call them a couple of Mennonites there, a young Mennonite woman named Rachel, and a young Mennonite man named Jacob, and they'd actually come in a horse and buggy, and their horse was out there in sort of the wagon shed, waiting. They were like on a date, but they were working, and they took, at one point when they had time, they took Elaine out, and she got to meet the horse, a filly named Freunden, which is German for friend, and Elaine had such a good time. She was talking so fast, and Elaine at one point said to them, won't you get in trouble, or don't you get in trouble with your fellowship, with your community for working at a beer hall? And they said, well, maybe. They were taking a chance. Though, Mennonites, they drank beer. But anyway, they rested on a certain passage in Scripture, which was Corinthians 9:21. She remembered. She was going to go look that up. Because there was a Bible somewhere around the house. She was going to go look it up. She thought maybe under the umbrella of Corinthians 9:21, they would be able to do this, because they loved working there too. Oh, Elaine was just so excited. And she was going to get Dr. She got to stop calling him Dr. Omar asked her if she'd come back Saturday to work again. And of course, Elaine said sure. But he warned her that Saturday the clientele was going to be a little different. They hadn't been open that much, but they'd been open enough to see that there was a kind of a difference in the clientele that would come on a Saturday night, and she should be a little bit warned about that. What she wore was great. That's just fine. I mean, she was just so excited. So when she finally wound down, during this time, yeoman couldn't get a word in edgewise, as they say, and same thing with Lance. She was just that excited. And she kind of went bouncing up the stairs and said goodnight and went to bed. And they all went to bed then, because they were all kind of tired. It was a big day. The last thing that Lance sleeping on the couch again this night, and as the house got quiet, the last thing he heard before he went to sleep was he could hear that gorgeous, deep, alto voice of Elaine upstairs singing softly in a foreign language he didn't know, and he knew what was going on. She had a little TV up there, and she had found the Mandili trio, the trio Mandili, and she was singing some of those Georgian folk songs that had made her so happy. Lance thought, he was reminded of, he had this one teacher in high school. I hope everybody has a teacher, something like that, who'd really put his heart into literature and taught about Wordsworth. And he remembered him teaching about a Wordsworth poem called The Solitary Reaper, about some woman singing that he couldn't understand her language, but it was so wonderful. And he was thinking about that, and she was singing softly. So with that, he went to sleep. They all went to sleep.